Kemi Badenoch wants to make your life better. She said so herself in this interview. She wants to fix things because she's an engineer, and engineers like to solve problems. They're kind of methodical, they make things work. But what they generally don't do is sit in front of a camera and spend the same pot of money 3 times in 4 minutes. But we'll get to that.
I'm an engineer. I think about solving problems. How do we fix this? How do we get this to work? As a politician, being Prime Minister is the way that I can be in a position to actually bring those solutions into reality.
So you want to be Prime Minister?
Of course, but for a purpose.
This is from an interview yesterday, one of many she's been doing lately as she tries to convince the country that, really she is trying to convince the country that she knows what she's doing. She's more confident now and more willing to sit down and talk. She told the interviewers because she's got a clearer sense of who she's opposing.
Is that it's easier to know what it is that I'm opposing. When you have a new government, it's actually quite hard to work out what it is they're trying to do. It is now very clear what we have.
So they've got worse, not you've got better.
Well, it's clear what they are. They're a party that's just about welfare. They're the welfare party, not the Labour Party.
Right. So she knows what she's against. It's Labour and it's welfare and people on benefits. What she seems considerably less clear on is what she's actually for, and more importantly, how she plans to pay for it. So let's run through this list, because Kemi Badenoch has promised a lot of tax cuts recently. We've had the family farm inheritance tax, stamp duty, business rate, and now, in this interview, we're scrapping green levies and VAT off household energy bills. Everyone plays to a different audience. So we've got farmers, home buyers, small businesses, anyone who opens an energy bill. Quite a long list for a party that last time was in government left a 22 billion black hole in the public finances. So if you've watched any of the recent Kemi interviews, you might remember a video where we did on her 47 billion welfare cut, the one she was supposed to fund all of this. I'll link it at the end if you haven't seen it. Just to give you a quick recap on that, it was the one where we established fairly comprehensively that her numbers don't add up.
Rising costs, huge deposits, and of course, stamp duty.
Stamp duty is a tax on aspiration.
So, at Kemi & Co, the Conservative Party, we have a simple solution.
Conservatives have a plan to scrap stamp duty on your family home.
Saving you thousands.
And it's fully costed through our £47 billion savings plan.
So we know that the foundation for her entire economic offer is, sitting on, it's already cracked. And then she goes on to this interview and introduces another funding mechanism. The North Sea oil and gas, drill more, collect more tax revenue, use it to lower bills.
If you drill oil and gas in the North Sea, you get billions of pounds in
But the
revenue,
prices are set globally.
which you can use from the taxes, because you
so
tax
it's a tax
those, yes,
take.
and then your tax take increases. You get billions of pounds, which you can then use to lower bills. Right?
Okay, fine. We'll just go with it at the moment. But watch what happens next. The interviewer asked how she fund the renewable energy investment without the current subsidy mechanism, and this is her answer.
Drill oil and gas in the North Sea and use the money from that.
So now it's also funding renewable subsidies, and she's already said that she's replacing the green levies. So luckily, actually, the interviewer spots it.
You're using that money for an awful lot.
Yeah, but it depends on how much you drill. Well, the one thing you're not getting by ending the drilling is any money. You're getting zero. That doesn't work. Everybody is saying this needs to happen. Even Tony Blair's saying it. Renewable UK, Centrica.
So we've got one pot of money, not yet drilled, not yet taxed, not yet collected, is simultaneously lowering household bills, replacing green levies, and funding renewable energy investment. The interviewer asks her directly to account for this, and she doesn't. Probably because she can't, and she knows she can't. That's why she pivots to Tony Blair agreeing with her and just moves on. But here's what makes it better. In the very same interview, she says this.
The windfall tax taxes investment. There was one company I spoke to who said that they're taxed 104% of their profits. This is not about creating extra taxes.
She's adding another tax cut into the mix. She wants to scrap the windfall tax on the North Sea producers, the taxes that right now is generating the revenue that she's just promised to spend 3 times over. She wants to cut the income and spend it simultaneously. An engineer who submitted these figures would be sent back to their desk. I suppose you could charitably argue that lower taxes means more drilling, means more revenue overall, But that's like a supply side case, maybe. But that's a long-term contested theoretical argument. It's not a funded policy. You don't get to announce a specific spending commitments today against revenue that might materialize eventually, depending on investment decisions made by a private company reacting to a tax environment that technically doesn't yet exist. So the welfare cuts don't add up. The North Sea revenue is being spent before it exists from a source she's also cutting, and at some point something has to give. So who picks up the tab? Well, she tells you that as well.
It is removing levies, removing taxes is very different from taking taxpayer money to give to people. That's what the government wants to do. More taxpayer money for people on welfare. I think that is wrong.
Well, they haven't actually said it's for people on welfare,
Well,
have
they've
they?
said it, well, they pretty much have.
They've said it would be
it's
means tested.
Only the most vulnerable.
In principle, do you believe that support should be means tested?
Well, I believe that support comes from taxpayers. It's not money in Keir Starmer's pocket. It is the money of your viewers. He's taking that money to give to people who are on benefits, just like they did with the budget. What I'm saying is, why don't you just take the taxes off people's bills instead?
And there it is. Tax cuts are free. They're just moving the burden. But targeted support for people who can't afford their energy bills, that's taxpayer money, going to people on benefits. Labour said the support would go to the most vulnerable. Kemi says they pretty much said it was for people on welfare. They didn't, but accuracy isn't the point. The framing is the point. Benefits bad, tax cuts free, any money flowing downwards is dependency, any money staying with the people who already have it is liberty. This is the plan. Cut taxes for farms, for houses and for businesses and for energy bills, fund it with a welfare figure that's already been broken, plus oil revenue that she's cutting tax on, minus any acknowledgement that public services need to be paid for by something, and if someone asks who absorbs the gap, well, pivot to talking about cheat.
If you want people who will look away when they see cheating, whether it's cheating on benefits or cheating the taxpayer out of stuff, there are loads of other parties that will help that happen. If you want someone who's going to say no and doesn't care about the abuse that she gets for doing the right thing, then come to me. I'm not afraid of doing the right thing.
Yes, she is very brave. It takes real courage to tell a struggling family that the targeted help they need is welfare dependency dressed up as policy, while spending an afternoon promising tax cuts to every other constituency she can think of. Engineers have to make the numbers add up. You can't design a bridge and explain that the load-bearing calculations depend on how much steel you might buy later, depending on whether the windfall tax gets scrapped, depending on Tony Blair's opinion of the project. Kemi Badenoch is not an engineer. She's someone with a very long list of promises, a funding plan that's already broken before this interview started, and a very clear idea of who she thinks should absorb the cost. And the people she has in mind? Well, they don't vote Conservative anyway.